Hi, welcome to a special edition of Education Matters, searching for the new normal in public education in New Jersey. We're looking at the reopening of our schools and hopefully in September. With me is Dr. Danny Robertozzi from the Clifton School District. Welcome, Danny. How are you doing?
Ray, thanks so much for having me. It's always good to see you.
It is good to see you. The last time we didn't see each other, we were just on the phone.
That's
So anyway, the governor laid out his guidelines for the reopening of schools. I know you didn't just start after those guidelines. How did you start to address it? One of the recommendations there is to have a pandemic team. How did you have a team structured? How are you looking at your staff to address some of these issues?
Yeah, Ray, we did actually, as I'm sure most other districts, we've been working on this, well before the governor's guidance came out on Friday, and we've had a district committee operating probably for about 6 weeks, and that committee is made up of all of the stakeholders you could think of: teachers, administrators, parents. We have community members. We have a wide representation on that committee because we want to make sure that everyone is heard on this really. It's going to be a really complicated issue, and we set out from the start that our goal in the whole reopening plan is to prioritize the health and emotional well-being of our students and staff first, and we really want to make a good faith effort to accommodate the diverse needs of all of our students and families, because we want to give parents a choice in September. I think that's going to be a critical part of our reopening.
What I've seen is like 3 different scenarios that can happen. That you have one where you come in-person school with social distancing protocols, completely virtual learning, which is how we ended the year, and then a hybrid of both of those scenarios. How do you see the year progressing? What are the pluses and minuses from those?
Well, I'll tell you, Ray, when we received the guidance on Friday, I was happy that we were given flexibility as a district to have multiple options. On the other hand, we would have liked maybe some more stricter guidance when it came to social distancing and some of the more health-related things like that. But having said that, a district the size of Clifton with 11,000 students and 20 different school buildings needs to have multiple options. So of the options that you suggested, there are pluses and minuses for both. For sure, we're going to need multiple scheduling options. All right, we're going to come back to school, we're going to open up, and we're going to have social distancing, and hopefully from pre-K through 5, a traditional schedule. But at the secondary level, with Clifton High School having almost 3,000 students, there's no way that we can go back to a traditional schedule. It's going to have to be some sort of A-B schedule or hybrid, 1 day online, 1 day in-person schedule. So that's kind of the hybrid model. At the elementary level, we really want to get our kids back in school. And, the pluses and minuses, when we get back in person, the difficult thing to do in school is social distance. The other difficult thing to do is to, make sure everyone is wearing masks. We're going to require our teachers and students to wear masks. I wear a mask for an hour at ShopRite, and I'm dying at the end of it. So I don't know how teachers are going to wear a mask all day. So that's certainly, a minus. The complete remote option, the negatives there are that despite our best efforts, students really weren't receiving the same education they would be receiving if they were in school. In addition, childcare issues, that's a big minus. Parents need to go to work. The governor has said multiple times, if in order to open up the economy, schools have to be open. And in fact, I was just reading an article this morning from the Academy of Pediatrics, and the Academy of Pediatrics is encouraging students to be physically present in school in September. They said there are major health, social, and educational risks to keeping children at home. And then when you look at the hybrid, which is a combination of both, you combine the issues of both of those scenarios. So none of them is a great solution, but my hope is that by providing parents and students with multiple options, giving them some choice and some say in the matter will be the best way to go about it.
Social distancing, and you kind of alluded to it, is pretty difficult. Our schools are not structured for social distancing. That was not what the architects had in mind at any grade, probably. How are you looking at it? Because in different scenarios, like the buses, the cafeteria, how are you trying to deal with those? Those are difficult, at least maybe to me. That seems like difficult problems.
Right, you're absolutely right. It's extremely difficult. One of the ways that you can do it is you have to modify the student movement patterns in your schools. So you might, and you're going to use signage and markers on the floor so students know what 6 feet is. You're going to change up and down stairwells. You're going to make sure that stairwells are used, only going one way. The school bus issue is almost comical because it's impossible to socially distance on a school bus. So what we're looking at is some sort of screens in between students, and where that's not a possibility, of course, we'll require that students wear masks. We're going to have to repurpose classroom spaces. We're certainly not going to be having phys ed as we've had it in the past with a couple hundred students in the gymnasium. So perhaps we can use the gymnasium as a larger area to have some academics. Cafeteria is a huge issue, right? Yeah, you put hundreds of kids in a cafeteria. At the secondary level, right now, we're looking at a possibility of a kind of grab and go. If we're not on a full day schedule, if we're kind of on a half day schedule, maybe at dismissal, the students grab a lunch and go. So that's one of the options we're looking at. We already have 5 different lunches. We can't double that. And I think ultimately, the whole social distancing comes down to people changing their behavior. Right? We have to promote that behavior. We have to educate our students that the social distancing behavior can actually save lives and keep you healthy. And that's that education piece that'll be critical.
I noticed you said before that you're requiring your students to wear masks. That wasn't one of the requirements in the state guideline. Why did you guys come to that conclusion? Is that a health decision?
Yeah, I was actually surprised by that, Ray. I was surprised. I assumed, and I guess I shouldn't have assumed that was going to be a mandate. But our philosophy in Clifton is going to be very simple. Those who can wear masks will be required to wear them. The science is simple. Masks help prevent the spread of the virus. Having said that, like I mentioned earlier, I know it's difficult to wear a mask all day, but it's a simple solution to help stop the spread of the virus.
You and I had talked when you were looking at it, reacting to it in March and April. We talked about the special ed students. I think that is an area of concern for all superintendents that I know. How are you trying to address that? Because that's another tough. They're all tough issues. Don't get me wrong, but that is a tough issue.
I feel like I keep saying in every conversation I have, oh, that's one of the biggest issues we're facing. That's one of the biggest issues we're facing, but it's true. So many issues that are staring us right in the face are huge, huge issues. And of course, considering the varying needs of our special needs population is absolutely a priority. We've been looking at many different options to implement the students' IEPs. The difficulty is the whole purpose of an IEP is to have individualized instruction. And it's going to be very difficult to have individualized instruction in a socially distanced classroom. But we're going to do our best to meet, the needs to the greatest extent possible. We've been targeting ways that we can measure regression when our kids return to school and recoupment to measure their progress. As of yesterday in Clifton, we began our extended school year program for our special ed population. And they're having 2 hours of synchronous teaching. We've added in related services. We've incorporated yoga, guest readers, combining classes. We have hired behaviorists to assist in that. As part of planning for ESY, we surveyed our parents and about what would work and what they would want to see. And that data that we obtain from our surveys of our parents is going to be critical to provide our students what they need.
Well, you mentioned you surveyed your parents and you might have got some responses to this. You're probably going to have some staff members with health issues because you have a big staff. A chronic issue with asthma or something to that effect. And you're going to have some parents fearful to send their kids back to school. I guess you have to incorporate some way to still meet those needs in your plan, I guess.
Absolutely. That's where the flexibility comes in. I've said that word a few times, but it's so important that we not only that the DOE has given us the flexibility to put in the plans we need to have in place, but for us to be flexible in our plans. So yes, I'm sure there are going to be teachers who are not going to be able to return to work. Perhaps the easy solution is those are the teachers that might have to be in charge of the remote instruction, as opposed to those teachers who are doing the face-to-face instruction. But certainly we're going to protect our staff. We're going to be very flexible with their schedules and meeting meeting their needs. But as a parent myself, as a parent of 4 children, I have concerns about sending my children back to school. So I certainly understand that there are plenty of parents who are going to have very, very strong concerns about whether or not they're going to send their kids to school. And my job, as I see it, is that we can provide the framework and flexibility so that parents feel comfortable with the options that we give them come September.
Did the parents express any, in your surveys, any concern about the virtual learning that they have to work? Was that a concern that came up among a lot of the parents?
A huge concern, a huge concern. Many were doing double and triple duty, working a job, teaching their children. Even when students were meeting with their classroom on a computer, they still needed to be supervised by a parent. Somebody had to be there. So yes, parents have stressed that that's an issue that they need to get to work. But at the other end of that spectrum, you have those parents who are saying, I'm not sending my child to school. I'm not going to send my child to school until there's a vaccine. And so you have both of those perspectives and everywhere in between. And how do we accommodate all of these different fears and perceptions? And that's kind of how I see my role in making that decision easier for parents by giving them multiple options.
And I think those fears and concerns change every week. We have a different perspective of the pandemic. You said, and I know it was a priority of yours, the social emotional well-being of your students. Is that hopefully if we come in person learning that you have to assess where your students are socially, emotionally, and academically? Is that like a priority in that first 3 weeks?
100%. 100%. It's a priority, Ray. One of the concerns I had when we were doing remote learning was the lack of social, emotional issues being addressed with kids being home. We know that depression rates have gone up. We know that abuse rates have gone up. We know that kids are more stressed than they've ever been. So when we come back in September, our plan is to address those social emotional learning needs through our PBSIS program. That's our Positive Behavior Support in Schools program. We have a $5 million grant to implement the program in all of our schools. And all of our schools have some measure of PBSIS, some are further along. But as part of that, we'll have clear PBSIS expectations. We're going to do a climate survey of students, staff, and families. We're going to collect anecdotal data from teachers and our counselors. We're going to add a second step program, which is an SEL support package to help teachers with their students in the classroom. We've changed our pacing from pre-K through 12. We're going to include more remediation and to address more of the SEL needs as we transition back in September. And finally, one of the big things we're doing is this summer, our entire counseling department, all of our counselors, are taking a advanced trauma treatment course. And the course is going to provide them with guidance on how to integrate therapy skills and techniques when working with students who have experienced some sort of trauma from this event. More importantly, they're going to take that and they're going to provide professional development for our teachers. So it's going to be embedded in right from the very beginning of the school year.
And I didn't mention this earlier, and for those who don't know the Clifton School District, they're doing all this, but it's a very diverse district with a lot of languages being spoken. So when you communicate with your community, you have to do it in a much different way than a lot of other districts.
We do. We have over 60 different languages spoken in the homes of our students. Our three main languages are English, Spanish, and Arabic. But you name another language and we have it. So that's a challenge. And that's also a challenge with getting our survey data out. We have to send our survey data out in multiple languages. And as that comes back to us, we need to be able to incorporate all of that data so we can make some informed decisions. So it is challenging. We are an extremely diverse district and we're a large district. I think we are still the 11th largest municipality in the state of New Jersey. So we're a big operation. But thankfully, I have a great team around me, and I believe that whatever challenges are thrown our way this summer, we will have a successful reopening in September.
Okay, and I believe you. I think the Clifton community will rise to the occasion.
No doubt.
Okay, that brings us to the end of this education matter. I'd like to thank Dr. Danny Robertozzi. Thanks, Dan.
Great, thanks for having me. I appreciate it anytime.
Okay. And I hope you enjoyed this special edition of Education Matters, where we talk about the reopening of our schools, finding the new normal in public education in New Jersey.